Everybody remembers their first wave, whether it be in the ocean, their first break in business, or their first big win. I'm David McClymont, a former competitive surfer now turned C-suite executive leading the Palm Beach Symphony into its 48th season, and your host on the Waves of Success podcast.
This show is brought to you by IYC Yachts, Chervaux, and Square Grouper. Produced by Media Zone.
Hey everybody, I'm David McClymont, and welcome to Waves of Success. We are thrilled to have two incredibly talented guests with us today. Paul DeJong, the all-star shortstop for the St. Louis Cardinals, who has spring training fields right here in Jupiter, Florida, and Sean Burnett, who spent 10 years as a pitcher in the major leagues. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with me today on Waves of Success.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, David.
It's my pleasure. So I want to talk a little bit over the next 20 or 25 minutes, a little bit more about what you guys are doing. You've obviously gone into retirement and
Yes.
transition. You've got some really exciting things that you're doing, making an impact in the community. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Paul will talk a little bit about what's going on with you with baseball and what you like to do outside of baseball. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Perfect. So let's kick it off. Paul, what have you been up to in the off season?
I've been down here since a little bit after Thanksgiving, just doing my normal training routine. But before that, I like to spend some time in northern Wisconsin with the family out in the woods and doing a little deer hunting. And I went out west this year for the first time to Montana and got a nice mule deer. It was a lot of fun. Put in a couple 15, 20-mile days, hiking those hills and just really enjoyed the outdoors, explored a little bit more. But now the new year's rolling around. We're into February even. So it's all training right now, preparing for the season.
So talk a little bit about the training. Obviously, I think a lot of people in the audience would like to know what a professional athlete does in terms of baseball to stay on top of your game. What does your training regimen look like?
It kind of goes in phases. I'll take about a month off after the season, just kind of being active, like doing some hunting, doing some stuff out in the outdoors, hanging out with the family. And then around Thanksgiving time, I'll start working out. That's when I really start getting in the gym again, trying to get strong. Things have changed a lot over the course of athletics, just knowing the history of it with weight training and strength training. So all that's really important for me and my recovery and how my body feels to be able to play a full 162 game season. So, you do that for about a month or so. And I started hitting a little bit earlier this year in December, and just been once the new year hit, started doing more stuff outside. So it kind of builds up as you go. Now I'm doing everything. I'm hitting, I'm throwing, taking ground balls, even get some live at bats right now off some pitchers that want to see hitters, and also the weight training and the running as well.
I think it's been interesting from a professional sports standpoint to see how much sports has evolved and how much it's progressed. So I'm really interested to see between the two of you. I know that from a surfing standpoint, the things that the surfers are doing today is light years ahead of the stuff that we did. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about the two of you in terms of what do you think, Sean, has changed so much from a training standpoint from the days that you trained to what Paul's experiencing now from training?
I think the specific sport training, in baseball, you see kids starting to train at, teenage level. Now they're starting to train earlier, 12, 13 years old, and specifically picking a sport, which is maybe not necessarily the best thing for them, but they, a lot of kids playing, especially here down in South Florida, playing year round. So things have changed drastically with the velocity. I think that's the clear, when I came up, if you threw 94 to 96, you're one of the hardest throwers. And now you're seeing sliders at 94. So it's a whole different game, and probably why I'm retired.
And that was a big part of why I wanted both of you on. I thought it was sort of interesting. You were a very accomplished pitcher, and Paul's a pretty good hitter from what I understand. I guess you had a pretty good changeup, was it?
Yeah, I was more of a sinker changeup guy, especially as a starter. And then when I went to the bullpen, I had to learn a slider to get the lefties out. So
I guess the big question is, back in the day, would Paul be able to hit you?
He would have some success probably. I'm just going to throw a sinker down the way and hope I get a ground ball to short. So
for the viewers that aren't familiar with a changeup, talk to the viewers a little bit about how you held it. I think it's very fascinating for people that don't follow baseball. Having played baseball, it's really interesting. It's almost like a chess match, I think, right? So here you are the pitcher. He's the batter. You guys are going through a series of variables.
Right. Yes.
Probability.
Before the game, you kind of go over too.
Yep.
He knows my strengths. I know his strengths and weaknesses. So that's another thing the game's evolved. And there's so much information now on hitters and pitching. There's scouts everywhere. So almost too much information. So you kind of got to pick what you like. And, I was a big guy coming into the game as a reliever. I want to know the hitter. If a man was in scoring position, is he a first pitch swinger? Can I get that first pitch strike on him, or is he going to come out swinging on me? So little stuff like that, what I would pick out the information, but I was always going to stick to my strength. What the hitter's strength is or the weakness, I'm going to go to my strength when the game came down to it.
How did you hold the ball walk us through some of the pitches?
Well, I was a majority, probably 85% sinker ball guy, especially as a starter coming up. I was trying to, that the game's also changed now. Now there's more swing and miss, looking for the strikeout. When I first got up, it was try to get to the 6th, 7th inning with 60, 70 pitches and get deep into the game. Now it's, go out there for 5 and let it eat and, get to 100 pitches in 5 innings, where we would get in trouble when I was coming up in the minor leagues. You got to learn how to get, deep into the ball game. Where now if you can give us 5 solid innings and punch out a bunch of guys, that's what they want. They want to take out the variable, the ground ball, and the error, which is not what I was brought up how to pitch. So I was more sinker ball, 85% sinker ball, trying to get early outs in the first 1 or 2 pitches of the at bat, and then I would try and mix in my circle change. I threw a lot of 2-seam fastballs, so I would throw the circle change with the 2-seam too to try and make the spin, like a little bit harder for the hitter to pick up, I would say. But I always, to move up to the minor leagues, to get to the big leagues, I felt like you had to have 3 pitches and you had to be able to throw them all for strikes at any given count. And that's how you slowly worked your way up to the minor leagues. And when you got to Double-A, the difference between those guys going to the upper levels was, the 2-0 pitch as you're coming in. A ball, 2-0 is going to be a fastball and you're going to get hit hard, where as you work your way up and the guys that work their way to the big league level, or 2-0, it could be an off speed pitch. And that's what really gets the hitters, off balance and makes it a little bit easier to get outs.
So Paul, from a batting perspective, are you able to pick up on some of the mechanics, some of the body language, I remember when I grew up playing baseball, my dad was a pretty accomplished baseball player. He was always talking about body language, right? Try to study the body language of the pitcher to see if they make a mistake in terms of anything within the body that gives away the fact that they're actually throwing a changeup, a slider, whatever it might be. Talk to the viewers a little bit about how you go through that with the psychology of studying pitchers like Sean or the other pitchers that are in the leagues today to make sure that you have higher probability of making hits.
Yeah, Sean kind of hinted at it, just the amount of analytics in the game right now. So I'm able to watch before the game. I'm watching all their pitchers. I get to watch video. I get to see how their pitches move. I could see how hitters react to certain pitches. So I'll be able to kind of develop a plan or a strategy of, how's this guy pitch? What are his strengths? Sean says he pitches to his strengths, but not all pitchers do that. Nowadays, they might pitch to your weaknesses. Depends on the type of pitcher, but there's a variation there. But overall, it's about watching him on video. That's the beginning of the process. And then I think really timing him up on deck is really important. As a hitter, you're watching his release point. You're trying to figure out how fast he is to the plate. So you're just trying to get ready to see the ball. And I think all that scouting stuff that you do before, you take that on deck. But then, once you're walking up to the plate, the best hitters are able to go up there with a clear head and be able to see the ball and hit the ball. It is a cat and mouse game, a chess match, like you said, but at the end of the day, we're being athletes out there making athletic moves where, Sean might make a good change up and I might be thinking about hitting a fastball low and away to right field. And then I might be able to use my length of the barrel and still get a base hit, so everything's not all cut and dry perfect out there. There's things that Sean's trying to do to get me off balance, but there's things that I'm trying to do will basically eliminate variables. When you have all these things going on as a hitter, it can really cloud you, and he's got the ball. So, it's just a really interesting dynamic, hitter versus pitcher. It really is all the action. Most of the action of the game is literally one guy versus one guy, and the other guys are just kind of there. So it's a pretty epic game. Baseball is, pretty primal. I've got a rock, I got a stick, and who can do better,
Execution comes down at the big league level, who's going to execute the most.
Better between the two of that
right,
matchup.
On a given day, especially, you play in the division. I was with the Pirates, we play the Cardinals. You face a guy 10, 11 times during a season. They have a pretty good idea of what's coming, and now it really comes down to execution. You're not going to trick a big leaguer when they've seen you 10 or 11 times in the season. So it's going to come down to executing. You hope you hit it at somebody.
Well, I think a big part of it too is fundamentals, isn't it?
Yeah,
go back to the basics. I know that in any of the sports I play, and we've played golf together, the three of us, golf's a great example of that. You go back to the basics, and definitely from a hitting standpoint, right? Just make solid contact, put the ball in play, solid contact, probably from you is just.
We were talking about a golfer the other day. We were talking about that, and we were making a joke, and my buddy said, you think, and we're talking with getting the this travel team together, you have to teach the kids the fundamentals because that's what's going to come out in the pressure situation. You can do everything and look great, and if you don't have a solid foundation of what to go back to when the game gets tight or late in that situation, that's where the fundamentals come out, and that's why we train hours and we throw so many bullpens for that one pitch to know when the crowd's on their feet in the eighth inning, I can locate that fastball where I need to, and that's the only difference, and that's what got guys to the big league level and left guys in A ball and double A is that execution part and believing in it.
I want to add something to that. It's easy as a youth player to maybe see the big league players and think they're doing something so much different than what I do. And it's really not. We stress the fundamentals more than anything. I think that's what makes a big leaguer is they're able to do those fundamentals better than anybody. So, as a youth player, if you're out there trying something out of the ordinary, that's not what being a big leaguer is about. It is, like Sean said, it's about executing your fundamentals, whether that's offense, defense, pitching. All of it comes down to you executing what you can do the best.
Well said. It's interesting, too, going back to data, share a little bit more about what's changed in the game with data, because obviously we've all been influenced with data. Data's changed a lot. The devices that we have, the technology, the access to technology. Paul, from your standpoint, what is data doing to help make the game easier? I'm sure you could probably also get into analysis paralysis. So talk a little bit about the data and how it's helping the game and helping you as an all-star hitter.
From an offensive perspective, I'd say, or more from a training perspective, there's a thing called the Rapsodo that will measure exit velocity of your hit it or your batted ball and the angle that it leaves your bat, called the launch angle. And also the most important one for me is the spin. It has a clock and it can show you if you're, ideally you're backspinning the ball at 0-0, perfect backspin. That's how you'll get the perfect, most distance on your batted ball. You don't want to be hooking balls and they're side spinning and it starts at the left fielder and then it goes foul. All that stuff will tell you on the Rapsodo machine. And we use that in the cage when we're training so that we're able to see and kind of reinforce what we're doing. And then from a scouting perspective, you really get to look at the pitchers. I can see Sean's release point relative to average. I can see his velocity, his movement. I can see his extension, how close he gets to when he releases the ball, because some guys seem like they're throwing 100, but they're really only throwing 95. And you're wondering why. Well, maybe he's got, long arms and he's really extending off the mound and the ball gets on you a little bit. Or some guys throwing 100 and it looks like 91, there's a lot of different things you can dive into with data. I think I start losing analysis by paralysis when I start analyzing myself as far as my results. Sometimes if something's glaring, like, hey, you're hitting 60% ground balls are outs in the big leagues. Sean was a sinker baller as a starter. I'm sure he got a ton of ground balls, a ton of outs, double plays. Those are the pitcher's best friends. They save you out of jams, save you runs, save you pitches, you go deeper in the game. So overall, I think there's a lot of information out there, but you have to be really careful about what you're using. And then you have to use it in your training to know what adjustments do I need to make in order to be a better player. It's not just, okay, this is who I am, and I'm going to keep doing this because the numbers say that. You use the numbers to kind of direct yourself and readjust your course.
How similar is that technology to golf? It sounds almost identical.
The Trackman, where you see all the guys in the range, the Trackman is what they use in baseball too.
Because if we go hit balls on the range, it's going to show everything you just talked about.
And the Rapsodo is the best teaching tool, I think, especially for young kids, because now you have the slow motion cam too you can put behind it. And when you can see what your fingers are doing behind the baseball at full speed, and they can slow it down, and you get to the side of it just a little bit, that little bit creates a lot of spin, sideways spin that he's talking about hitting. You don't want to create sideways spin, or you want certain spin. If you can create true backspin on a fastball, you're that 90-mile-an-hour guy that now it plays 95. It just looks faster because the spin rate. And they didn't have any of that when I first got up. That was towards the end of my career, and they used it too much, I think, to the younger kids in a 9 o'clock bullpen. I don't think that's the time to air out and try and get 95 at 9 o'clock in the morning. So but I think it's very beneficial and an easy way to fix a breaking ball when I can see my hand work and see the spin and get the actual rotation. It's something that they didn't have when I first got up. And I think that's very beneficial to the future of baseball and every sport. Now golf's using it. They don't hit a ball in the golf range without the Trackman behind them. It's just like guys don't take BP without a Trackman or a wrap soda behind them, and they don't throw a bullpen with that either.
I'm so glad that both of you talked about fundamentals, because I think fundamentals can't be overlooked in sports. I think that for children, and you've met Mason, Paul, my son Mason, I have a 10-year-old son, and a lot of times I think they're so intrigued by these professional athletes, and they lose sight of the fact that all the professional athletes stretch, right? They do calisthenics. They go back up to all the basics that we had when we were in Little League. Talk a little bit about the importance of health with the younger generation for both of you, and then I'd love to have you both talk about the injuries that you've overcome, because I think the two go hand in hand. It seems like with sports today, we're pushing the envelope so hard that maybe it's opening up the possibilities to injury. One of the things that I love to share on this show are the people's stories of overcoming adversity. So will both of you talk about some of your injuries? Paul, why don't you start first? You had a pretty bad knee injury, didn't you? You had ACL reconstruction. You know, I talked about that.
Yeah, it was the first week of high school, and tore my ACL. I was, 13 at the time. I spent, most of that first semester on crutches. And so talk about starting high school and then, being on crutches. It was a pretty big shock for me. I played basketball and baseball in high school. That was basically my only sports, and I got hurt in an outside league. We weren't even in season yet. It was still football season, so we were playing on this travel team, and, just a freak accident. And, I grew about 6 or 7 inches after that surgery that I had in the fall there in my freshman year. And about a year to the date, I tore it again. And, it was just one of those things that I think it really developed my hunger to be a good player, because I remember being literally in tears after finding out that I had hurt myself and I wasn't able to play. And my uncle is a doctor, and he said, maybe you should wait another year until your growth plates are done. And I was like, no, I can't wait. I want to play. So I got my surgery, and I ended up playing like the back half of my freshman season, and made it up to varsity a little bit at the end just to kind of cover some spots. And then, a year to the date, October of the next year, in my sophomore year, same thing happened again. And that's when I kind of realized that, if I want to keep going down this path, I know it's not going to be easy. I just proved it to myself. And so that time around, it was really more developmental for me. The first time I went through it, I was like, okay, I'll be fine. I'll get out of it. And, I just wanted this normal, high school active life, and I just realized I wasn't made for that. I was made for something more. And so I think really, when people go through these things, you almost have to embrace it. It's turning the sacrifice and pain into, glory and achievement. I think there's a way to, 180 those emotions. And I was able to dig down and find that. And, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that.
And Sean, nobody knows that better than you, right? You came right out of high school. You played high school at Wellington High and was drafted from high school, you were saying, right into the...
Yeah, I got fortunate enough to get drafted in the first round right out of high school, and started my pro career at 17 years old. And was pretty, to be honest with you, was pretty easy path to the big leagues, which, I did not take for granted, but I kind of cruised up the ladder and got to the big leagues at a young age. And then had my first Tommy John kind of at the end of my rookie season, which kind of changed my whole path of my career, and had to kind of start to build over again. But it was the first, adversity I faced on a baseball field or in my baseball career my whole life. You kind of stepped on the field. You were always one of the better players growing up, and kind of high school played out just like you could imagine, and the dream came true. And then here I was at 21 in the big leagues, and now I'm going to get hurt. It was kind of devastating. And like I said, I had a great doctor, a great teammates, and a great family support to kind of help me get back. And I was able to get back in the middle of my Tommy John rehab, tore my left labrum, getting stretched. And so that was way worse than the Tommy John. The rehabbing your shoulder is awful, especially for a pitcher. It's kind of the engine that gets you going. So I was honestly never the same after that shoulder surgery, but played my whole major league career after the shoulder surgery mostly. So I was able to come back, but it was never the same with the shoulder. And I got about 10 years out of my first Tommy John, and had it again there with the Angels towards the end of my career.
Commend both of you for overcoming those adversities. Both of you are very philanthropic. Both of you believe in giving back. Talk a little bit about Crooked Hat Baseball and what you have going out in Wellington. I think it's very fascinating, and I want to thank you and commend you for what you're doing in the community to fill a void. Talk a little bit about the void you're filling and why you think it's so important.
No, I retired a couple years ago, and I have a 13-year-old son. He playing baseball, and just watching from the sidelines, thought it was time for me to kind of get involved and bring some good coaching. There's some talented players in our area that I'd love to get my hands on and build a team around. And with, being 13, 14, they're just getting ready to go into high school. And I felt like this is the perfect time to show them the path with some of my experiences and, bring in some coaches and help them out and get them on the right path, get their parents to understand what they need to do and the exposure they need. So I've got into crooked hat baseball. I was a left-handed pitcher, obviously, and always wore my hat a little crooked. So I thought it was kind of funny to go with crooked hat baseball. So we're in the process of getting started where I've made some phone calls with some kids. I was able to get Wellington High School as a field. There's not too many 60, 90 big league fields around where, that you have access to in our area, which is unfortunate. So the school board was great to me, and they're working with me. We're getting some insurance taken care of, and hopefully here in the next 2 weeks, we'll have crooked hat baseball. We'll have a team out there and teaching the kids and getting more kids to come to the community and trying to, bring back baseball how it was when I was, coming through high school.
So if there's a child that's in Palm Beach County, how do they find out more about crooked hat baseball?
They can give me right now. We'll have some social media coming up. Like we're breaking the ground right now. I'm working on uniforms, just got the logo set up and stuff. So really, I didn't want to get too far ahead of myself until I knew I could get a baseball field. And I didn't realize it was going to be as hard in South Florida to find a baseball field. So now that I have access to a field, I'm kind of building on that. So we got the logo, we got the uniforms trying to get worked in, and I'm not going to hold a tryout. Like I said, I grew up in this area. I know quite a few people. I was able to help out Landings Middle School. So I got to see some other talented schools and talented players around the area. So I was going to reach out to them, and hopefully I can, get that 12 to 13 kids on the team that want to be there and, put in the time and want to get better. So I'll slowly reach out to the guys I want, and, hopefully this turns into something special. Long run, I would love to have a baseball academy. That's where it's really at, where I would love to have where I could have a few teams in an indoor facility that guys could come to, and maybe a field or two on the outside so they could do their training, baseball training, weight training, get schoolwork done if they need to, and then the baseball field will be right outside the door. So that's the dream. But right now, we're just going to start with a team and see how far we can go.
And I believe you were mentioning the closest one is Orlando. Is that right?
Complex, for
a baseball academy?
Big tournaments. Yeah,
right.
Big tournaments. There, Cressy has a beautiful facility here. But, for actual tournaments, the, Boomba Complex in Orlando and Sanford, and the Nationals old complex in Vieira, they turned into an amateur sporting, for softball, baseball. So there's two in the state, Obviously, they're a few hours away, but I want to build a facility where the kids can, do everything in one: the weight training, your baseball training, schoolwork, and then have the field at the facility where they can just go right out and get practice done.
So we'll put that up onto the Waves of Success website, and we'll share it everywhere else once you get it up, so people can actually follow that.
Thank you,
Paul. You and I have known each other, I guess, about 5-6 years now. You have been a very good friend to me personally, and you've been a great supporter of the Symphony. And I want to thank you for that. But talk to us a little bit about the other endeavors that you have as far as supporting missions that you think are super important. You were down in the Dominican Republic this past summer. Talk a little bit about the charities that you support and why you support them.
Yeah, so this last season, I was approached by an organization called Players for the Planet. It's kind of run by Chris Dickerson. He played in the big leagues for a while, and he's kind of doing this nonprofit now. It's kind of has a bunch of different endeavors. The one specifically you're talking about in the DR is we went down there and did a beach cleanup. Just the amount of plastic and styrofoam waste there would really blow your mind. Us here in the pristine beaches on the Atlantic side, we kind of take for granted. But, going down to somewhere like that and seeing kind of the rivers polluted and, people know where to put your trash and all these other things. So I think it was great to go try to clean up a beach or two. The locals were really happy. It was great to network. We had people from professionals, rock climbers, some professional major leaguers, all sorts of people from industry too coming down there for that cleanup. So it was a great time. And even some of the kids at the academies were showing up. So some of the local kids, teams have academies in the DR to kind of develop some younger Latin talent. And also we learned about Robinson Cano. He built the biggest recycling plant in the whole Caribbean on the Dominican Republic island. And so it's just great to kind of educate people on what the problems are, but then also coming up with solutions. And they had this great thing in the river that had basically a trash collector. Things would kind of just funnel into it. And it was a pretty cool, I think it's called the Interceptor. Really cool technology that they just sit it in the river and it collects, something crazy like a ton or two a day. something like that. Don't quote me on that. But another thing I was involved with in St. Louis through Players of the Planet and this other organization called One Tree Planted. And that's one I had pledged so many trees to be planted in St. Louis based on how many home runs and doubles I hit last year, extra bases. So there's this great park in St. Louis called Forest Park. It's supposedly bigger than Central Park. I've been to both. They're different, but anyway, that's our claim to fame. And so there was a reforestation project that they needed done in that park. And if anyone's ever been to Forest Park in St. Louis, it's a very special place. Everyone in the whole city and the whole county really knows about it and values it. And so me personally, I spent a lot of time walking in there, the art museum, the history museum. There's even a golf course in there. I know you guys both are big into golf. And so I was very thankful to be partnered up with Forest Park Forever, One Tree Planted, and Players for the Planet, all to plant. We planted 242 trees in this area. I think it was like a 2 to 5 acre area, something like that. And it's kind of just a legacy project. So about 10 years, I can't wait to go back there and see how those trees are doing. And just really enjoyed, giving back in that way, especially putting my hands in the dirt. I love the outdoors, and conservation is very important to me. So I'm excited to do another project this year in St. Louis. I know we wanted to get to some urban areas. There's in some of the urban areas, there's really no trees at all, so we have a lot of work to do there. It was nice to kind of help Forest Park, but there's plenty of other good infrastructure or tree structure, I guess. So, I'm just excited to keep growing with those organizations. It's just a lot of fun for me, and I'd like to get a little bit more donations and other things, try to raise some money just so that it's not just me contributing, that I can kind of bring some more people in and just raise the awareness.
Speaking of awareness, we'll make sure that we put all of that information up on the Waves of Six podcast website and all the different channels. What do you both like to do to unplug? Right, we all have our own things that we like to do. So, Paul, when you're not playing 162 games and grinding it out, trying to make sure that you're achieving all the goals that you have personally, what are the things you like to do?
I've really gotten into meditation and basically recovery things. It's everything for me is related to baseball and my career. And I'm trying to do things to increase the longevity of my career. So, there's all sorts of different things that people have come out with recovery strategies. But for me, float tanks, listening to peaceful meditation music, stretching, and just being in the moment with my body and occasionally some music. I think those things are very important. It's very easy to use technology all day, every day, but I think even 10 minutes of just a meditation, even if you fall asleep, it doesn't matter. It's really just about being able to unplug. I think that's so important. And you really don't have to do anything. It's like, well, what am I going to do when I unplug? Well, just let it come to you. It's more about just the free flowing aspect of it and not, being stuck in the screen. So, there's a million things. You could do whatever you want, just not on technology.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's changed too in the game drastically over the last 10, 15 years is recovery.
Mm-hmm.
The recovery, guys right after the game stops, it's, recovery time. And I think with the science, the machines they have now have helped guys prolong their career of what they know what to do now. And I think recovery is big change in the game and probably in sports. Over the last 10 years, I think, Tom Brady made it big, and I think a lot of guys looked into it, and I think the recovery is you're going to see, more longer primes and careers because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of which, I don't know if you follow surfing at all, but I don't know if you saw that Kelly Slater just won the Pipe Pro at almost 50. 6 days before. Speaking of Tom Brady, he's sort of the equivalent of the Tom Brady of surfing. And a lot of that speaks to what you just said, is that those two are very similar in terms of recovery, what they put in their body, how they treat.
Diet.
Yeah.
Diet, I think, goes in with the recovery. I think that's how a lot's changed.
And Brady was a shining example of that. To think that he's 45? Was he 44?
44.
Right?
I think that's really important for the youth players to understand that it's never too early to take care of yourself, they have fast food across from the high school, but bringing your own food, if it's a better option, a healthier option, more sustaining. It's all about being smart, and those choices are not going to be easy. It's going to be hard work. So I think anyone trying to undertake a career in baseball or professional athletics needs to understand that it's never too early to really sacrifice in order to get there. And obviously, we talked about unplugging and getting your rest, and those things are very important as well. But when you're active, you need to be all in.
Yes.
Well, Brady talks about that with what he puts into his body. He says that it's his temple, right? And I think he proved
No, I think
it worked out quite well for him.
I hope with, being able to coach these kids, that's something they learn is, the all in, like, you can dream it, but then, there's a lot of, high school when my buddies were going to the beach and hanging out, I was going to the field to run foul poles, those things. Did it suck at the time? Yes. But, I got to go play golf yesterday, I'm retired. So you put in the work to hopefully, you may never get there, but you go and you put the work in and hoping, and you do everything you can to put yourself in that situation that when the opportunity comes, that you've known you've done everything. And I think as I continued to work and got to the big leagues, that the off-season workouts is where you kind of win. It's, you mentally get yourself in that grind of, you stay on the mound in September, you don't feel great. You've put the work in December and January, and that's how you grind through that 162 games.
I love to read. I'm a big advocate of reading, and I love to try to grow and learn. And one of the books that I love is Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. And in that book, he talks about the 10,000 hour principle. And I'm sure you guys have heard this before, but it's so fascinating. He does this very extensive research on the 10,000 hour philosophy. And it's so true. I mean, you have to put the time in. Well, if you want to be good at anything, you got to put the time in. But I think it goes deeper than that too, because it's not just the physical time. Both of you touched upon this. It's also the emotional time, right? Unplugging what you put into your body.
Right. There's, you can go to the gym and do your 45-minute workout, or you can go to the gym and you're mentally in it, and you mentally grind it. And that's the difference between a professional athlete. They're not just showing up. They're all in mentally, physically, and I think that's a big part of it.
That's something that quality over quantity is very important for a big league athlete. Just we understand the quality reps are the ones that count, and we're not going in there trying to take 45 minutes of swings when I could go in there and take 20 minutes of great swings, And another thing about the trajectory of your career and how you can make it is it's easy to look on social media now and you're like, well, this guy's made it. It looks easy. I could do that. It's kind of a little bit of a false premise there. We all have to work from very long time, and you don't see all the hours and all the investment that we put into our craft. So really, if you want to do that, there is no magic pill. It's the nitty gritty. It's down, boots on the ground. You're in it, and you're doing anything you can for a long period of time, and that's the 10,000 hours. That's how you'll make it.
And that's what I've talked to our kids that I've reached out to is, all these kids now, they play 150 games, 200 games a year. That doesn't matter if they're 8 years old or 15. They play all year round. I was one of those kids in South Florida, played all year round, but I've talked to the parents, and it's practice. We're going to practice 3 or 4 times a week. We may play one game on the weekend, but it's practice. It's not 6 games and one practice. It should be the other way around, and that's where the 10,000 hours. And no, it sucks taking ground balls for 45 minutes, and it stinks, not getting to swing for the fence and working on something and trying to go the other way and learn to hit a hard ground ball the opposite way. Like, those aren't fun, but that's why the big leaguers can hit, is because they do the little things. And you don't see them in the cage hitting off the tee at 4:00. All you see is the home run at 7:30 when the lights are bright. You don't see when they got there at noon working on things. So that's a big thing I preach to these kids is, less games and more practice. And plus it'll keep you healthy. It doesn't matter how good you are at 14. You have to be productive at 17, 18 years old when these scouts come. If your arm's not feeling good when the scout shows up your senior year, that's your one chance. And they don't care how good you were at 13 or 14 at perfect game. They want to see you on, this day at 18 years old, and you're not able to perform. You're useless to them. And that's so important, is to keep these kids healthy and not play so many games at a younger level, and it wears them out. You want the kid looking forward to going to the field, give them a couple months off. The big leaguers take 3 or 4 months off. Yes, we're training, but we don't play a baseball game for 3 or 4 months. You get that drive again to want to get back out there. And I think these 13-year-old kids, 14-year-old kids playing so many baseball games, they're not looking forward to going to the field. And I want to look forward to going to the field, looking forward to playing a baseball game, at the same time getting better and knowing the grind. And if you want to do it, I'm here. I live the life. I have an idea of the road it's going to take. Now, if you're willing to bust your butt and get it done, there's a chance. Everybody has a chance. I don't care if you're a first rounder or you're the 50th rounder. Once you sign, everybody has the same chance, And that's, I think, with the kids and the parents, is getting out there and showing them, and get them the right exposure.
I think the kids practicing, like Sean said, it's a great point, not playing as many games as a youth. You work on the fundamentals. We can go to the field and Sean can run a practice and we could say, okay, we're doing bunt plays today, or we're going to work on fly ball communication, or, we're going to make some throws across the infield, or we're going to take a bunch of ground balls and we're not going to throw because you guys threw a bunch yesterday. We're just going to take ground balls, move around, learn how to use the glove. I mean, all these things can be done and you can become a better player and it'll show up in the game more naturally. So when these guys, like Sean's saying, they're playing 150 games, you're not looking forward to going to the field. Pitchers are throwing sliders at 13. Their arms are shot by the time they're 18. A great 13-year-old pitcher is now not being a great 18-year-old. So all that is very important for preserving. And so laying that very broad and strong foundation is very important for any success in athletics.
I had Dr. Andrews, the surgeon, who did my surgery, but his biggest thing sitting down with him one day at lunch was the best baseball players in America will never make it on television because they're going to be burned out or injured. You know, a lot of your best pitchers when you're 14 years old never make it. And looking back, there were some really hard throwers when you were 13, 14. Where were they in junior year of high school? The one, they didn't play anymore. They had too many injuries and their arm was shot. So talking with Andrews, just to hear him say like the best pitcher may never make it on television, it's just sad, you know, because there's opportunity out there and you want to give your kid, like, I just hope the kids that come play, I give them an opportunity and exposure to maybe get to play college baseball. Now, professional baseball is such a, you know, it's a long shot and a dream. Not going to say it can't happen. We're both here. But at the same time, to play college baseball, you should be damn proud of yourself because that's not an easy thing. And there's only, you know, there's 25, 30 guys in a college team. And I don't think people realize there's only 11 that have scholarships. So when you watch a college baseball game, probably nobody's really getting the full ride, you know, so you have to have the grades to be able to get the educational scholarships. And then if you can throw in a little athletic scholarship too and help the parents out, that's great too. But my goal is to get the kids exposure and the opportunity that they can save some money for their parents, you know, for college baseball. And if some of them are good enough to go play, you know, professional, so be it. But, you know, at least give them the opportunity to move to the next level.
Well, that also creates a gateway too, though, as you just said. Right, Paul, I know you're a big person of science and having a backup plan. I think to your point, you know, if they go to college and they play in college, it also gives them the opportunity. If they don't make it to the majors, they've got something to be able to fall back on.
I think with the draft dropping a few rounds, I think you're going to see college baseball get a lot better. I think they dropped to maybe 10 rounds. They used to be 75, 50. I think as the major league draft shrinks rounds a little bit, you're going to see less kids sign maybe, and you're going to see, you know, more competitive college baseball too.
Yeah, I didn't have any opportunity to sign out of high school, and really I walked on at Illinois State and earned a scholarship later on. I got redshirted even too, but all that, and I knew that, okay, well, I'm a good baseball player. I'm playing Division I baseball, but I wasn't playing right away. I changed positions, learned how to catch. So all these things were happening while I was still doing my biochemistry degree because I was preparing. Like, I needed to have a quality education and, you know, working in science and technology. I mean, that's just what I chose. Not everyone has to choose that, but the importance of education, it'll keep you on the field. You need to do, if you want to play college baseball, you need to have good grades. You need to have your education, you know, on lock. So you can't just overlook at 13, 14 years old, your grades even in high school. I mean, that's how you're getting into college. So you have to realize the importance of doing, broader things. And that's something I wanted to mention earlier is that Sean grew up down here. I was born in Orlando and played 2 seasons until I moved to Chicago when I started 6th grade. But then that's when I started playing basketball. Kids don't play other sports anymore, but I think there's very much value in doing other sports, learning different movements, learning how to run and jump versus just catch and throw. You know, there's a lot of things that can be said about broadening your horizons in order to kind of develop that passion. And then eventually you kind of taper off like Sean and I did towards professional sports, you know? So I really you shouldn't be training only baseball as a 13-year-old. I think you should be doing other things, especially with education and maybe even art and music if you can.
I'm glad you said that because I try to introduce Mason, as you know, Paul, to many different things. He skateboards, he surfs, plays tennis, plays golf. And I think as athletes, we've learned that a lot of the biomechanics are really similar. If I think about the advanced things that I have to do in surfing, it's almost the exact same movement you make on a baseball or a golf ball. As far as the trunk and everything else, the same as hitting a tennis ball. Yeah.
Balance and core stability for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Golf swing, baseball swing, very similar. So yeah, I mean, you can play golf and be good at baseball. There's a lot of baseball players that are very good at golf. I think Sean is very good.
Well, I think
he's a pitcher though.
Well, that was
not a baseball. That was a
shot. That was a
pitchers
shot.
golf more than
but that's
hitters.
a perfect segue though because we have a golf match that's coming up, I was hoping someone would tee it up. No pun intended. Okay, so what are the odds in Vegas of this big golf match that's coming up? Because there's been a lot of chatter.
What are the teams?
The teams I think are Paul, and
You
Joe.
and Gene.
Yeah, it's you, Gene, myself, and Todd against Paul, Burton.
Oh, I'm with Burton and Luba now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I thought I was with you.
Yeah.
But all right.
I like our
Game on.
chances.
I still think we.
I like
take
our
it.
chances.
Yeah. And I played with him. He said, "I've never played very much." And we played 9 holes. Played pretty well. I don't know. He was maybe 3 or 4 over. And then all of a sudden he says, "You want to play a couple more?" And I said, "Sure, we'll play a couple more." Plays the next 3 1 under.
Oh, wow.
And I played with you, and you hit it about a Texas mile.
Yeah, but
So this will be fun.
sometimes sideways.
Are you a lefty, Sean?
I do. I golf left. I do everything. I do everything right-handed except for baseball and golf.
Yeah.
I throw
Okay.
a football righty, baseball lefty.
Pool,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Everything's righty.
Kick?
Right.
Interesting.
Everything.
Cool.
I bat lefty, and so I golf lefty.
So growing up, were you ambidextrous? Were you a switch hitter?
I didn't ever switch hit. I could
You always
throw.
batted
I could
from
throw,
the right or the
I
left?
bat lefty. I could throw a baseball well right hand. Right. My dad's lefty. I think I grabbed his glove when I was little and thought that's how you're
Nice.
supposed to throw. So kind of have some funky mechanics, but I think it's because I'm not naturally left-handed. But it worked out.
My dad pointed me out to a twin theory he has that if you have twins that do baseball, they'll mirror each other. One will be a righty and one will be a lefty. So if anyone ever sees that, it's a pretty interesting phenomenon I've seen a few times.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So as we close out the show, any advice that you'd like to share with our listeners as far as how they catch their ride of their wave to success, overcoming adversity? What things would you like to share with our listeners from your experience from both of you?
To be honest, like I just dream big. My thing is you dream big, and if you want it bad enough and you're willing to work at it and sacrifice, I mean, you can get there. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm an example. Paul's an example. Like you're going to have to work, and you're going to have to sacrifice. And like you
Mhm.
said, you get to turn the TV on and get to watch us play. You don't get to see the sacrifices we made
Mhm.
as teenagers and as young adults, and the sacrifice you still make as a professional athlete. We still give up a lot. And yeah, the off season is great, but your off season after the new year is you got a time. I'm going to go to the gym from 9 to 11. I'm going to hit from 11 to 1. It's
Mhm.
by 4, hopefully I'll be free. But people I think would be shocked to see like our off season day is pretty set and scheduled, like what
Mhm.
we're going to do. And yeah, we can mix in a golf round every now and then, but Monday through Friday, I can pretty much tell you during my career and off season where I was going to be on a Monday through Friday.
Mhm.
Trying to get better.
Yeah, I piggyback off what Sean said. Dream big, but then you start figuring out what pieces you can bite off. Slowly but surely. Okay, you're a 13-year-old. Okay, now you're about to start high school. You're like, okay, I want to make that varsity team. What do I have to do to make that varsity team? And then you start playing varsity, and you start playing a little bit better. You're like, okay, now what do I got to do to get college? How do I get to college? And then once you're in college, you're like, basically how I approach it is I always want to be the best player on the field, and I always just knew that I was going to be the best player at any level. So you just continue that higher standard for yourself, and you have to really push yourself. No one's going to pull you. No one's going to direct you. I think you got to take ownership and responsibility of yourself, and that means sacrificing. For me, it meant sacrificing social life, really, because you add up sports, education, and social. You're going to have to lose one, really, to be honest. You just don't have enough time or energy to last. So I think knowing that if people knew what we sacrificed in order to get to where we were, they would understand the process. And if you understand that, you can apply it to anything you want to do, not just sports. So I think just understanding that sacrifice for a greater purpose is how you kind of get there.
And self-evaluation too. I think that's
Mhm.
something I've worked on. Sorry, I keep going back, but I'm working
Mhm.
with these younger kids, and I think that's a hard thing. Like when you walk off the field each day, did you get better?
Mhm.
And if you didn't, that's okay. You got to look in the mirror and say, hey, this is what I need to work on. And
Mhm.
so many kids just think, you're not great at everything. You can't. There's big leaguers that have weaknesses. You have
Mhm.
weaknesses, and those are what you have to work on. And it's not fun. And, you get frustrated, but, be able to look in the mirror and evaluate yourself.
Mhm.
If you're 12 or if you're 20 or whatever business you're in, and did I get better today, or what do I need to get better? And then go sacrifice and work on those things.
Mhm.
So you touched upon a couple of things that I apply in a business standpoint. One is visualization.
Mhm.
So I think visualization is really important. If you can visualize going through the process of being successful and whatever
Mhm.
that is, that's really important. The other business principle is the 168-hour rule. So I had a great mentor about 10 years ago that said, David, if you want to be successful in life, you have to apply the 168 principle. And I said, what is that? And he said, well, if you add up 24 hours times 7 days, there's 168 hours in a week.
Mhm.
How you use those 168, both professionally and personally, will determine your levels of success. So it talks about managing your time. And then the last principle that I think is so important before we close out the show is managing expectations. Right? We all have to manage expectations, both personally, professionally. So you're right. If you're trying to help coach these kids mentally, psychologically about managing expectations while they're still working, hopefully that will balance things out.
Absolutely.
I want to thank both of you so much for being my guest on Waves of Success. Paul DeJong, all-star shortstop for the St. Louis Cardinals. Sean Burnett, 10-year pitcher in the major leagues that's now started Crooked Hat Baseball. Be on the lookout for that. Thank you both so much for being with me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thank you very much for joining us today on Waves of Success. Make sure that you subscribe and like on all channels on YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, and follow us on the wavesofsuccess.life website. Thank you very much, and until next time, catch your wave.
If you enjoyed this episode of Waves of Success, don't forget to like, follow, and share. We'd like to thank our sponsors, IYC Yachts, Chervaux, Square Grouper, and the production team at Media Zone.